Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. It's Tuesday night. I thought I would circle back to quiet quitting and something that I discovered that I dislike the most about my job. And this is something that has bothered me all my life, but it became even more acute during the pandemic for a reason. I think the best way to explain this is with an example. So during the pandemic, needless to say, we were working remotely, and I was doing a lot of gig work, a lot of tutoring remotely, and everybody had a lot on their minds, right? I would often get a 1 hour session, a 2 hour session. It's remote. You could do it from home. You could do it, assuming you can find a place that was open. You could do it at a library. You could do it anywhere, right? Now, something interesting happened. I would have a student that might want to meet from 4 to 5. It's over Zoom, right? And it created a little bit of a problem because it might be 2 o'clock and you're already thinking, do I need to head home? Do I head somewhere that the Wi-Fi might be tricky? I better get there early to make sure the Wi-Fi is working, right? If I'm going to go to a library, which I love doing because I sometimes just happen to see the right person. I'm looking for a life partner in my life, right? But I better get there like at least 30 minutes early, just in case Wi-Fi doesn't work. I can head home, right? Or you guys know that I love. At the time, I didn't do it yet, but nowadays I love various art projects. Some of them need continuous time, right? So, for example, the metal casting, the Mondrian art square is not so bad. I could put that aside and come back to it. The metal casting, not so much, right? There's hot stuff. I live with roommates. I certainly wouldn't want to walk out of here with equipment that is still hot, right? So I got to think about that before I could fire up the furnace. I got to think, when do I have to pause, right? And that's a consideration. And it made me realize that even if I had a 1 or 2 hour gig and it was remote, right? Don't forget, if it weren't remote, it would be a lot worse. Even a remote 1 or 2 hour gig has a big footprint on my time schedule, right? I came to realize, even during the pandemic, I started to realize that. Wasn't so bad before the pandemic, though. Ever since the pandemic, this concept has gotten way worse than it has before, especially for somebody like me. I'm single. People think that I don't have somebody to tend to. Not so bad here at the community colleges, but it has happened before. Now, I teach at Central Arizona College. I teach next semester. I'll be teaching at Glendale College, and I'll have to think about if I'm lucky enough to land both of those contracts, because contracts often get canceled last minute, right? So, and then I have remote work with another community college. I'm hoping I'll let you do the Google Maps. Glendale Central Arizona College in Apache Junction. I'm hoping one of those contracts gets canceled. It's a very weird feeling when you're signing a contract for a gig work, and in the back of your mind, you're hoping one of them will get canceled, right? It kind of reminds me of fractional reserve banking, right? The bank it has all these deposits, but in the back of their minds, they know they can't honor all of them, right? And so that's kind of, unfortunately, I'm doing fractional reserve gig work, right? And so it kind of blew up in my face this semester. I'm trying to hold it together, but it created a lot of drama for my social life. But let's imagine I get both of them, which is not completely undoable, right? They don't. There's no time conflict or anything. It's just more than I want to do. And one class is like, let's say I got to teach at Apache Junction from 9 to 11, and then there's another class that might meet in the evening. Over Most of the students over in Glendale are evening students, and it creates a wedge in the time schedule. I mean, even if you add up the commuting, right? And you got a grade, so the grading can happen any time of the day. So that's usually not a big bottleneck. But it creates a little bit of a wedge where there's time. You're not teaching anything. You're not commuting anywhere, but there's a limit to what could go on, right? So, for example, it's Tuesday night. Tomorrow I got a class at 10 o'clock. And it puts a limit to what can happen, right? Even though I've long since moved out of my parents' home, I feel like I have a curfew again, right? And it puts a limit. It's 10 o'clock at night right now. It puts a limit to how much caffeine I could use at this time, right? It puts a limit to how wired up I can. I don't use anything other than caffeine, but sometimes I watch various YouTube videos that get me wired up. Maybe I get into an argument with a girl on the phone, and now I can't sleep. It puts a limit to whether or not I could do stuff like that, right? Not nothing crazy. I certainly wouldn't do anything dangerous or illegal, but it still puts a limit to what can happen at a certain hour of the day, right? And so it goes to show nobody has a 40-hour a week job, right? It's a 24/7 commitment when you think about all that has, even on the weekends, right? I, I I can't tell you how many times even my Saturday activities can be limited by the fact that something has to happen on Monday, right? My clothes have to be ready, meals have to be ready. Obviously, I'm not in a position to be eating in the dining halls in the campus every day. I wish I were because I could mingle with a lot more people there, and so it puts a big barrier. So I really don't have any complete off time, right? Even when I'm on vacation, I guess vacation is one of those times where I kind of, I last April I traveled to Kerrville, Texas, to go see the solar eclipse. But the big highlight of the trip wasn't the eclipse. It wasn't even mingling with people. It wasn't the sights. Those were nice. But one day, as I was on my way, I got out of my car to go get some groceries and to go talk to local people. And all of a sudden, it hit me like a breath of fresh air that I wasn't constantly checking the time. I can't tell you how many times, even during my off hours, I have to think about the time, right? If I were to go, even though it's 10 p.m., weather here in Phoenix is really nice. If I go outside to ride my bicycle, I got to think about the time. If I ride far away and I have to return home, I definitely need to think about the time, right? And it's a huge distraction to the thrust of my life. Imagine imagine there was somebody out there. It's not hard to imagine, right? Because we have 8 billion people in the world, and a good probably more than half of them have some sort of slavery going on, right? If it's not outright slavery, it's the kind that I'm talking about, right? And imagine that person was about to go out for a bicycle ride, and with their head clear, they were about to come up with the cure for cancer, the cure for COVID, a way to make chemical element 119, a new AI that will solve some kind of worldly problem, right? But they're going the time, and it completely shuts out their thoughts on that, right? I guarantee that has happened more than once, right? And so it's very unfortunate, right? Um, and I really loved it when I was in Kerrville. My head got so clear that things that I didn't think of jumped right to my mind. Right, I had a tough contract to negotiate. I'm only an adjunct professor, right, at multiple community colleges. I was thinking about how to negotiate with my dean, and various pickup lines just jumped to my head, right, without me having to think about it, because I wasn't bogged down by what time is it, right? And so I can't tell you how liberating. Ironically, I went to see an eclipse that was completely non-flexible with time, right? A solar eclipse, but the main highlight of it was I didn't have to think about the time. Right? It's kind of ironic now that I think about it, right? Anyway, I wish we could. I'm just throwing this nugget out there. If you employ people, if you manage people, think about this concept. If you don't, if you work for somebody, think about how to not let this concept bother you. One of my favorite strategies, a little bit of a life hack, if you will, is when my boss tells me he wants to see me at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, or one of my students says he wants to come see me for my office hours at 2 o'clock, or whatever it is, I treat that time as kind of a suggestion, right? If I'm 5 minutes late, so be it, right? If being 5 minutes late is what allows me to have a level head so that I could actually talk to these people constructively, that's a very good trade off, right? Now, here's the funny part. I allow myself to be 5, 10 minutes later, be flexible. Funny thing is, I've never missed the deadline because I think our bodies are kind of wired up to do the right thing anyway. Plus, with the level head, everything flows so much more efficiently, right? Maybe I was just overthinking it a little bit. Anyways, I thought I would elaborate on this concept that I like to call clock fever. And unfortunately, Very precious little time do I get during the year. Do I not have to think about the time, the time, the time, the time, right? I only got it for a couple days this year. I hope to get more of it, right? This is the Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum.